So my question is to John, are accidents inevitable?
Yes.
Please explain.
Because while we're alive, things can go wrong with us. You'll see a particularly silly campaign from the TAC at the moment, who are well known for that type of thing. They've got on board with this zero accidents idea. And that's quite easy, really. All you do is choose a small enough space and a small enough time. You can choose almost any 1 metre length of road in Victoria and say, let's have no accidents here tomorrow, and you will. And your campaign will be a success. Conversely, if you choose a big enough area or a big enough length of time, it won't work.
Interesting. Okay, we'll take that for now. Does anyone have any other questions? Yes, we've got someone down the front here who needs us.
Closer to here, sir.
In the categories of risk or the categories of hazards, do we include some of these internal biological risks? I think you gave epilepsy and some others as an example. You know, our focus was really on things that are external to the person. Not that the internal biology of a person is not important, but we included things like the restroom facilities or porta potties and things that are caused by humans, but not necessarily something that was included within somebody. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. Question over here.
Hi, Deborah Hunt from ESM. My question is for Matthew. My colleague and I guess we facilitate risk assessments, hazard workshops as part of our everyday work. And it can often be very difficult to come up with and recognise all the hazards in any particular situation. And I was very interested in what you said about the quality of hazard communication. And you mentioned about where the hazard assessment might take place. Often we do risk assessments in a building, in an office, just where you can happen to get all the participants, because it's often very difficult, everyone's very busy. So it's done in a room, and we try to draw out from people who are going to work with the equipment how they're going to maintain it, how they're going to operate it, and what the hazards might be. And it struck me that perhaps if we went out on site and conducted these exercises, it would no doubt be a much more fruitful process. And I just wondered if your research bore that out.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just an anecdote, one of the things that I realized when we went on so many sites was the organizations that tried to have a centralized safety meeting, for example, at a lunchroom facility or in a job trailer, or as you're saying, in a classroom type setting, really those meetings lacked specificity, right? So they'd talk about trips and slips and falls and so forth. Whereas if you broke people up into smaller groups, the workers led the meeting themselves, and they were right there where the work was going to be taking place. They could see things like, oh, there's some water leaking in here, which is a slip hazard for us today. Or, it's windy in this bay where we're going to be doing work, and it's dusty on the floor, and that could cause problems. So the hazards they identified became much more specific, whereas the more generalized meetings off-site, if you will, were very specific in general, or very general and not specific.
Great question, thank you. Any other questions? One over here.
Sorry, I have the microphone. With respect to your hazard wheel, I've always liked the energy transfer thing, but have always had a problem with what do you do with psychosocial hazards?
I'm sorry.
Stress.
Oh.
Bullying.
That's a good question. I don't have a good answer for you, where stress would fit in that. I think that a lot of the work-life balance type things and stress being another good one, fatigue being related to stress. It's not, it is a hazard, and I think, the environment needs to be scanned for those types of hazards. but we don't have that included in the energy source, so I think it might be something independent of that wheel, and it should be considered.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Christine from local government. I have a group of project managers that are too terrified to make a decision, and they want me to over-regulate paperwork so that they've ticked all the boxes, because the stories of them being held accountable in court terrifies them so much now. They can't make a decision. And I try to have this conversation about trust your own judgment. You've been doing this for years, but they seem not to be able to do that anymore. How do you change that mindset?
Who would like to answer that? Perhaps Drew. We pass that one to you.
I don't have an easy answer for you. I have a feeling that that's very much the same question that got asked in the earlier session, that what happens when you want to give people autonomy and they would like to use that autonomy to reintroduce regulations and reintroduce punishments. And we've got stories of things like peer programs after injuries, where we found that the peers that we gave autonomy to were far harsher than management was ever going to be. It's a bit of a price that you pay for sacrificing control, as people will use that control in very strange ways. The only answer I can give you is if someone asks to be regulated, refuse. If someone says, I want you to tick this box and say that this is safe, there is nothing wrong with saying, sorry, that piece of paper that's got the box on, well, we've just removed that from the system. There is now no procedure for me to approve it. I will come and I will talk to you. I will come and I will listen to you. I will come and I will help you talk to your staff. I'll give you suggestions, but there's no piece of paper to tick anymore. It's gone.
You could just tell them the truth. Yeah. Well, the truth is that there is almost no chance of any person being prosecuted for anything to do with safety. Almost all legal actions are civil ones. Even after tens of thousands of deaths associated with asbestos, arguably as big a problem as Bhopal, or nearly as big, as far as I know, the total number of prosecutions by the Crown equals 0. Now, I'm not sure if your people are going to cause anything that big. But you could then go on to say, OK, the prospects are slim, but there's still something. And how do you counter this? Well, every safety rule is based on doing what's reasonable. So why not say to the folks, how about when you've got to decide between plan A and plan B, that you make a note somewhere or an email saying, these are my two options, and I'm doing this because it presents as being the better and more reasonable approach because of these reasons, A, B, C. And I know it's not without risk, it just appears to be the reasonable way to do it.
And I'll just add my 2 cents worth. I've found that what's really helpful is giving people the skills to do risk assessments. So really helping them understand likelihood and consequence, and then using the hierarchy of control. And that's really covering all bases. I think if people can manage to follow those steps, then they're doing what's practicable. But yeah, it's hard. It's an ongoing problem, isn't it? Any other questions before we break? I've just got one last burning question that I have to ask Drew, because you made a comment, Drew, you're talking a lot about the use of positive storytelling, which I think is just absolutely the way to go. We can't rely on fear. But having said that, would you agree that fear does work in some circumstances? I mean, personally, I know that I gave up smoking out of fear that I was going to be killed from it. Would you see that there's any role in that sort of fearful approach?
I'll give you a straight, honest answer. There is very little evidence that anything that anyone does in the name of safety works.
Wow. Okay.
The stuff I was talking to you about, positive storytelling, we're working on it. We have no evidence that that works. I think it's a much better idea than the stuff that it's replacing, which we also have no evidence that it works. But we have good science that suggests that fear as a motivator has very short-term, very direct and very blinding effects on people's awareness of danger. That's all sound. Fear will concentrate people's attention on very specific things for a short period of time. If that's what you think will keep people safe, then go for it.
Okay.
But we sit here, Drew, in these surroundings, having the opportunity to say that people's safety efforts have amounted to nothing, in the luxury of a space that's been delivered to us by people working on safety. The materials from which this building was made and the standards to which they were made and the design of the building and the lack of toxicity in the materials that were used and the ventilation of the building and the electrical systems. We owe a lot even to plastic. As you pick up the power cord, you're 2 millimetres from being electrocuted. But the quality of those materials give you the luxury of doing that. So I don't think it's right to say that the work people have done on safety has amounted to nothing.
To be fair, that's not exactly what I said. I said we've got no evidence that any of it works.
I think it's
I think
plain to our
there's
eye.
reasonable evidence that some things worked.
I think it's
There's no evidence as to which bit it is that has worked.
It's inescapable
Wow.
that it's been effective.
You know,
Which particular procedure, which particular process?
The mechanical ventilation that ventilates this room is providing the air for us to live, and we're living. It's before us.
Yeah, I'll buy that. The risk assessment for the mechanical ventilation, probably a waste of time.